Get the unmissable news stories of the day.
This is the Beijing Hour.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Shane Begum with you on this Thursday, April 9th, 2026. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, coming to you live from the Chinese capital. On today's program, Iran's accused the U.S. of violating 3 conditions of the 10-point ceasefire agreement. Iranian media say the Strait of Hormuz is closed once again, forcing oil tankers to turn back. The Chinese Kuomintang delegations visited Shanghai, experiencing drone deliveries along with other cultural and business activities. In business, China continues to improve business conditions for the country's small and medium-sized enterprises. In sports, Champions League action between PSG and Liverpool. In culture and entertainment, an exhibition in Shanghai explores different styles of photography. Now checking the day's top stories. Iran's parliament speakers accuse the United States of violating 3 out of Tehran's 10 conditions for a ceasefire, saying it'll be unreasonable to proceed with talks to reach a permanent peace deal. Mohammed Bakr Kalibaf listed a Lebanon ceasefire breach, drone incursions, and the denial of Tehran's nuclear enrichment rights. He was set to lead Iran's delegation in Pakistan, while Vice President J.D. Vance would head the U.S. side. Kalibaf said a workable basis for negotiations has been undermined. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump said all ships, aircraft, and military will remain in and around Iran until the ceasefire agreement's fully complied with. Israel and the United States say the ceasefire between Tehran and Washington does not cover Lebanon. The Israeli military said it completed the largest coordinated strike across Lebanon since the start of the regional conflict. Israel said it hit more than 100 Hezbollah targets within 10 minutes in Beirut, southern Lebanon, and the Bekaa Valley. Hezbollah said it fired rockets toward northern Israel in response to what the group called ceasefire violations. A Hezbollah official said drafts of the U.S.-Israeli truce agreement with Iran included Lebanon. Civil defense authorities said more than 250 people were killed and over 1,100 wounded. The Lebanese prime minister has declared Thursday a national day of mourning. Isabel Debris has more from Beirut.
We've seen ambulances squeezing through rush hour traffic, trying to get to hospitals urging people to donate blood. We saw that actually entire apartment blocks were hit, just piles of rubble in the street. There's one very central thoroughfare in Beirut going to downtown as well as to the airport that was just piled with charred cars. We saw bodies on the streets. It was really horrific scenes across the city. This was, both according to the Israeli military and to everybody here, the most intense wave of strikes against Hezbollah, but also in very densely populated civilian areas, not just in the southern suburbs that have largely been evacuated, but really in central, crowded areas of Beirut. The Israeli military also said that it struck over 100 Hezbollah targets. So we heard that from the prime minister. The president issued another statement, even going further, calling them barbaric attacks, strengthening his criticism of Israel, saying that this was just a total violation of everything that they were trying to accomplish, really just crossing a line.
That was Isabel Debris on the destruction in Lebanon after Israeli attacks. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says strikes on Lebanon will continue. A military spokesperson said Israel will pursue Hezbollah wherever it goes. Jonathan Regev has more from Tel Aviv.
Regarding the strikes in Lebanon, shortly after they took place, Defense Minister Israel Katz issued a statement saying that this is the strongest blow that Hezbollah took since that beeper attack back in September 2024. Israel is saying loud and clear, the ceasefire agreement does not include Lebanon, period. It was echoed in a statement released by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu shortly after the ceasefire was announced. And Israel is saying that the war in Lebanon will continue with all force. The events that we're seeing on the ground, that latest strike in Lebanon proves that this is the case. We have seen sirens in some northern communities. It is widely assumed that Hezbollah will respond with much greater force due to that attack that it took. And there are also reports that Iran is even considering firing at Israel in response to the attacks in Lebanon. This due to the differences on this question, whether the ceasefire includes Lebanon or not. As far as Israel is concerned, once again, the answer is absolutely yes. And according to Israel, the strikes in Lebanon will continue.
That was Jonathan Regev reporting. Lebanese Minister of Social Affairs Hanid Sayed has condemned Israeli strikes on Beirut, calling them a very dangerous turning point.
These hits now at the heart of Beirut, at the heart of sort of so-called West Beirut, which already is hosting the majority of the IDPs in the shelters. Half of the sheltered IDPs are in Beirut, in this area, so this has created panic. And I think most urgent call to the international community to pressure the Israeli side to stop these kind of violations and bombings.
Well, she said the government's ready to enter negotiations with Israel to end hostilities, echoing an earlier offer by the president. Israel has not responded. China says Lebanon's sovereignty and security should not be violated and civilians must be protected. A spokesperson for the foreign ministry said China urges all parties to stay calm and exercise restraint to help de-escalate the regional situation. She said China hopes all sides will take the temporary ceasefire as an opportunity to resolve disputes through political and diplomatic means. Meanwhile, countries including Qatar, Pakistan, and France have condemned Israel's attacks on Lebanon. Canada, Spain, and Britain said Lebanon must be included in the truce deal. The Arab League Secretary General urged Israel to follow the agreement and stop military operations. A spokesperson for the UN rights chief has condemned Israel's latest strikes in Lebanon as nothing short of horrific. Thamin Al-Katan highlighted the scale of the killing and destruction in Lebanon.
Mass casualties have been reported and hospitals overwhelmed. A UN human rights team at the site of one of the strikes in the capital describes a scene of devastation and seeing several dead bodies amid the rubble. International humanitarian law spells out clearly that civilians and civilian infrastructure must be protected. There must be prompt and independent investigations into all alleged violations and those responsible brought to justice.
Well, meantime, Blerta Aliko, the UNDP resident representative in Lebanon, described the situation as very bleak, noting that 50% of UNDP's development program in Lebanon is currently suspended due to access restrictions.
And I don't want to put dramatic tones to it, but this is the reality that Lebanon and Lebanese are dealing with at the moment, with a very fragile economy, a very fragile and exhausted society, a very fragile overall system of reconciliation and how we bring the system and the country back to its feet.
Aliko said they want access and to be able to do their job in full safety. Coming up, Ronnie Media says the Strait of Hormuz is closed once again.
You've been listening to programs from CGTN Radio.
CGTN Radio.
We invite you to visit us online for more audio, pictures, and in-depth reports. At radio.cgtn.com, you can access a wide range of programs and find your favorite news, talk, features, entertainment shows, and podcasts. Hear the difference with CGTN Radio.
9 minutes past the hour. Iranian media say the Strait of Hormuz is closed again after fresh Israeli attacks on Lebanon, forcing oil tankers to turn back. It cited maritime tracking data as showing that an oil tanker heading toward the waterway's exit changed course and made a 180 turn, returning deeper into the Gulf. A Fars news agency said Iran allowed 2 tankers to safely transit the strait after the ceasefire. U.S. President Donald Trump said his decision to suspend the bombing was subject to Iran's agreement to the complete, immediate, and safe reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The White House says President Donald Trump's aware of reports that Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz and called the move unacceptable. Trump said on social media that it was agreed that Iran would not have nuclear weapons and the strait must remain open. Jim Spellman reports from Washington.
Even if the ceasefire makes it past these early hours and days, many questions remain about specific terms of the framework deal, including sanctions relief, the role of U.S. troops going forward, and the subject of enriched uranium, both Iran's right to enrich uranium going forward and the status of existing stockpiles, which were targeted by U.S. airstrikes last year. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth briefed reporters at the Pentagon Wednesday and addressed those enriched uranium stockpiles.
We know exactly what they have. And they know that, and they will either give it to us, which the president has laid out. They'll give it to us voluntarily. We'll get it. We'll take it out. Or if we have to do something else ourselves, like we did in Midnight Hammer or something like that, we reserve that opportunity.
Another issue, of course, is the Strait of Hormuz. A limited number of ships have transited the strait since the beginning of the ceasefire, but it's not clear how this is playing out now and going forward. The White House implied the strait is open, while some Iranian media sources say the strait has been closed once again over those alleged violations of the ceasefire. The ceasefire plan appears to allow Iran and Oman to charge ships a fee up to $2 million to pass through the strait. Those fees would, in theory, help rebuild Iran, though the White House says it wants the strait opened with no limits or fees.
Well, that was Jim Spellman on disputes over the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's reportedly seeking joint control of the Strait of Hormuz with Oman. Tehran indicated that it'll charge a fee for ships transiting the waterway. Some media say Oman has pushed back, making clear that no such toll regime is acceptable under existing agreements. Others suggest such a system may already be in place. Ahsan Kevani explains.
Iran's core demand, tolls. Tehran wants to charge every vessel passing through the Strait of Hormuz and share the revenue with Oman, the country on the opposite shore. That would transform a free international waterway into a paid corridor with Iran and Oman as joint gatekeepers. Iran also says it will prioritize passage of ships belonging to friendly countries. The nuclear program, regional security, and 45 years of sanctions, all inside Iran's 10-article framework. The Strait of Hormuz toll is not an add-on. For Iran, it is a final piece of a much larger victory. Iran seems to be dividing countries into two categories.
Iran can, with the cooperation of Oman, can come up with a mechanism to make sure that, first of all, hostile countries that have given bases to the United States for this illegal attack on Iran, these countries are not welcome.
But for countries not categorized as hostile to Iran, the scenario is different. Iran's Supreme National Security Council has drawn a clear line. If this process yields a decisive political achievement, Iran will celebrate a great historical victory. If not, it will fight on the battlefield until all Iranian demands are met. Iran is warning their hands are on the trigger. Any enemy mistake will be met with full force.
If they attack Iran again, this would be one reason to defend the country again. If they insist on maximalist demands, you're not going to have an agreement. Not having an agreement means you can have another conflict coming up soon.
So the Islamabad meeting is not about trust. It could be about price. Iran has named its demands: proposed tolls in the Strait of Hormuz, sanctions relief, and demands for regional say.
That was Ahsan Kevani reporting. Tehran and Washington have laid out sharply contrasting agendas ahead of peace talks set in Pakistan. They're at odds over Lebanon and the Strait of Hormuz, among other issues. To understand both sides' demands and how they'll affect the region, Tianwei spoke with International Political Studies Director Zhao Hai at the National Institute of Global Strategy.
There are a lot of differences, and details are really the devils, as we all know. So, Mr. Zhao, your take on how this issue likely be the thorn in a way?
The U.S. side demands a complete reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, but actually that strait is under control by the Iranian side. And they made it very clear that there is technical limitations. There's also technical limitations imposed by the Iranian side, meaning that if the ship wants to go through the strait, they need to report and under supervision. Therefore, so far we don't see a normalization of the transshipment. But I think in the coming days, if the two sides can continue to negotiate, the shipping will return to a certain level of normality. But as long as the two sides does not completely stop fighting against each other, we don't think that this will return to before the war normal level of communications.
What kind of ceasefire both sides are really talking about?
If you're seeing this from the Iranian side, this is really possibly a cover for the United States continue to transfer troops into the region and build up their military to prepare for a future attack on Iran. So even if Trump agreed to this ceasefire, but U.S. troops continue to move into the region. So in many ways, the United States does not back down as of now, and the threat continues to exist. Israel does not stop bombing Lebanon and also trying to continue to suppress the troops in its surrounding neighborhood. However, this is a bilateral agreement. The conditions are so far away, there's no common ground. However, the reason that both sides, and particularly Trump, accepted and paused his threats is because there's so much pressure building within the United States. So under this pressure, I think it's very difficult for Trump to continue his plan. With the current level of troops, Trump is stuck in between because on the one hand, he cannot actually achieve whatever ultimate military goals he wanted to achieve. But on the other hand, if he backs down now, then he loses face and possibly losing his power in the United States, losing control of his own party. So overall, I think this is very much a technical pause. But on the other hand, I am a little bit more optimistic because under the current conditions, they probably need more time to figure out exactly what to do for the next steps. So hopefully this, whatever you call it, ceasefire can last longer because so far we don't actually know exactly what message has been conveyed in both sides because both are declaring victory. And the items, the conditions are out there is apparently not compatible with both sides.
That was Zhao Hai on the prospects of a deal between Iran and the U.S. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has urged all parties involved in the conflict to exercise restraint and uphold the ceasefire. Pakistan's exhausted efforts to broker the Iran-U.S. truce. Sharif said it's just the first step and the destination's a lasting and durable peace. The Prime Minister has invited the U.S. and Iran to Islamabad for talks. Daniel Khan has details.
Preparations here in Islamabad are being described as intense and highly sensitive, with officials calling this a critical stage in diplomacy. Pakistan has been working round the clock to bring both sides to the table after securing a fragile two-week ceasefire between Iran and the United States, with the senior leadership in constant contact with Washington, Tehran and regional capitals to keep the process on track. Security and logistics are also being ramped up in Islamabad ahead of the talks, with the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance expected to lead the American delegations, making this the most significant direct engagement between the two sides in decades. But despite the momentum, tensions remain extremely high. Recent strikes and disagreements over ceasefire terms mean these talks are fragile and could still collapse if either side hardens its position.
The war has been temporarily postponed, and a ceasefire is the first step, but our goal is actually lasting peace, development, and prosperity. The day after tomorrow, at my invitation, the American delegation is coming to Pakistan, and as well, Iran's delegation is also coming to Pakistan.
Pakistani officials say this deal was on the verge of collapsing at the last moment. What followed was an intense overnight diplomatic push from Islamabad. The senior civilian and military leadership were in constant contact with both Washington and Tehran, working to close the final gaps on the ceasefire terms. Pakistan conveyed revised proposals, pushed a phased ceasefire framework, and crucially tried to rebuild trust at a time when both sides were openly accusing each other of bad faith. There were also indirect messages and confidence-building steps, including assurances on de-escalation and safe passage in the key areas like the Strait of Hormuz. Officials say without that last-minute intervention, talks would likely have collapsed, but Pakistan's ability to maintain channels with both Iran and the United States provided decisive in getting these back to the negotiating table.
That was Daniel Khan on Pakistan's efforts at achieving peace in the Middle East. Coming up, the Chinese Kuomintang delegation experiences drone delivery services in Shanghai.
Discover the realities and responses to our changing climate with Climate Watch. uncover critical issues such as the Masai Mara's disrupted wildebeest migration and the drop in the Panama Canal's water levels. Delve into solutions for a sustainable future. Tune in to Climate Watch on your favorite podcast platform. Become more eco-conscious and take action to protect our planet.
At 20 past the hour, Chinese Kuomintang Party chairperson Cheng Li-wen and her delegation have experienced drone deliveries in Shanghai. She placed an order for milk tea and received it 15 minutes later. They also checked out cultural exchange activities, operations at a port, and aircraft design. The KMT leader said peace is very powerful and called on Chinese people from both sides of the Taiwan Strait to follow a peaceful path, build on kindness and mutual trust, and work together to promote cooperation. The delegations visited Jiangsu province in Shanghai as part of its trip to the Chinese mainland. The regions are home to a large number of Taiwan businesses and entrepreneurs. We asked Dr. Wang Hailiang at the Shanghai Institute for East Asian Studies about cross-strait economic and social connections.
For
Taiwan investors, enterprises, and compatriots in the Yangtze River Delta region, their long-term development here has essentially led them to the conclusion that the region's development momentum has consistently been strong, and its future prospects are promising. The benefits Taiwan has reaped from the mainland, particularly from the Yangtze River Delta region, are quite substantial. According to the figures I've seen, in 2025, Taiwan's trade surplus to the mainland is around $150 billion. This clearly demonstrates that their decision to operate and develop here was the right one. So naturally, they hope for the overall improvement of cross-strait relations, as that would be beneficial for them. Consequently, when Cheng Li-wen referred to her 6-day visit as a peace tour, she received widespread support from the Taiwan business community.
Meanwhile, Taiwan Labor Party Deputy Secretary General Xu Mengxiang has voiced support for the Kuomintang delegation's visit. He said it's a step toward promoting peaceful engagement. Xu also expressed that closer cross-strait interaction is in the interests of the people.
We strongly support the visit by KMT chairperson Cheng Li-wen. At a time of rising tensions, this visit is an important step toward peace and development. It also shows that within Taiwan, there are still forces committed to dialogue, national identity, and peaceful engagement.
Kuomintang delegation's next and final leg is in Beijing. China and the U.S. are marking 55 years of ping-pong diplomacy. It began when an American table tennis player mistakenly boarded a Chinese team bus during the World Championships in Japan in 1971. The exchanges that followed helped lay the groundwork for establishing diplomatic ties. Dan Williams visited Liang Ge-liang, who witnessed that historical moment and is still contributing to China-U.S. understanding through the sport.
On the outskirts of Beijing, Liang Ge-liang opens up his home for another table tennis masterclass. In April 1971, Liang was chosen to represent China at the World Table Tennis Championships in Nagoya, Japan. Liang had a front row seat to one of the most extraordinary chapters in sporting diplomacy. Following a practice session, Glenn Cowan, an 18-year-old table tennis player on the US team, missed the team bus back to his hotel, so he then hopped on the China bus instead.
Because he got on the wrong bus. Zhuang Zedong took the initiative to welcome him and invited him to go to the arena together. So that gave him the opportunity. I was right there, so I also had the chance to chat with him for a few minutes. And we all became friends through table tennis.
On April the 10th, 1971, 9 US players, along with supporting staff, became the first US official American delegation to set foot in China since 1949. The trip signaled a major shift in Cold War strategy. The US President Richard Nixon made an official visit to China in February 1972. A few months later, China's table tennis team then visited the US. Liang was part of that team.
In 1972, the Chinese table tennis team was received by the president at the White House in the United States for the first time. We left with precious memories from that earliest visit. I wanted to experience everything personally.
55 years on, and Liang Gerliang meets up with another ping pong diplomat, former US player Judy Horfrost, at Beijing's capital indoor stadium.
Seeing old friends was very exciting. More than 50 years ago at the Capitol Indoor Stadium, especially recalling the beginning of our ping-pong diplomacy between China and the U.S., the gates opened between two countries.
The events of 1971, as well as the return visit to the U.S. the following year, have become important historical milestones in the China-U.S. relationship. And for those that were part of it back then, there are still lessons that can be learned from ping-pong diplomacy.
Only through more exchanges can society progress. Without interaction, without mutual learning, positive outcomes would not be possible.
That was a report on passing on the spirit of ping-pong diplomacy. China's engaged in a battle to stop deserts in Inner Mongolia from expanding. One area in the northern region is building a green wall to fight climate change. Sean Caleb's traveled there to ask locals about what's different.
The scars are easy to find, chasms carved through the yellow sandy landscape, the effects of erosion. 2 decades ago, this community outside the provincial capital of Hohhot began to fight back against the desert and nature. Millions of trees have been planted.
The first thing we had to do was to figure out how to convert as much natural rainfall as possible into ecological use to make sure it wouldn't be wasted or lost.
It's an incredibly arid region, starved of rainfall, but work progressed. In all, 3 million trees were planted: Mongolian pine, Chinese pine, apricot, elm. Funding came from a charitable donation. Technical expertise from Lin Kuocheng and his associates with the global environmental nonprofit, the Nature Conservancy.
At the beginning, when we started planting trees here, we faced enormous challenges. The area looked extremely barren and desolate. Whether trees could survive at all was a big question.
It has worked. The region 20 years ago, brown, void of vegetation. Today, it is fully green. The wind is from the north and seemingly always strong. But the people are strong as well and embrace change.
For farmers, the improved environment also means more rainfall, which brings benefits to agriculture.
Yang Xuantao has been tending to her livestock and working the fields of Inner Mongolia all her life. Trees, she says, breathe life into the region. It's now easier to coax crops from the sandy soil. But she says the most significant change, massive sandstorms that covered roads, houses, and blew far and wide into cities such as Beijing and Shanghai, are a thing of the past.
Here, the situation with the sand has improved a lot, and there's so much more vegetation now. There have been so many trees planted. The sand can't blow up into storms like it did in the past.
There is actually a local saying that described how bleak and how harsh the conditions used to be. No treasure underground, no grass on the ground, and no birds in the sky.
Here, it remains a constant battle. But more rain, more vegetation, less erosion, fewer sandstorms.
Hello.
It's an equation that gives people in this rural land hope.
That was Sean Caleb's reporting from Inner Mongolia. NASA has provided updates on the planned splashdown of Artemis II off the coast of San Diego on Friday. It's also outlined key steps, including crew and service module separation 20 minutes before entry. A Navy ship will assist with the recovery. We're at 29 past the hour. Beijing getting a light rainfall overnight. It's down to 8 Thursday evening. Sunny and 25 for Friday. Shanghai's getting moderate rainfall and 18 overnight, then overcast conditions and 26. Chongqing's down to 19, moderate rainfall and 28 tomorrow. Nanchang will see thunder showers and 21 degrees, moderate rain and a high of 27 tomorrow. Lhasa will see some sleet and it's down to +3, followed by sunshine and 13. It's time for a short break. So far this hour, Iran has accused the U.S. of violating 3 conditions of the 10-point ceasefire agreement. Iranian media say the Strait of Hormuz is closed once again, forcing oil tankers to turn back. The Chinese Kuomintang delegations visited Shanghai, experiencing drone deliveries along with other cultural and business activities. Shane Bigham with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Shh, listen up. Can you hear the heartbeat of our world? It's vibrant and pulsating with the essence of life itself. From the stem of trees to the gurgle of rivers, from the silent strength of mountains to the icy whispers of glaciers, even the solid ground beneath our feet. And right there, in the midst of all, beats the heart of humanity. What if those other heartbeats were to stop? Would ours keep on ticking?
Ever wondered what's actually going on in Africa through the perspective of an African? How are things really going between China and Africa? What's the narrative of this relationship? Well, get a perspective with China-Africa Talk. Hear from African diplomats, entrepreneurs, academics, Chinese natives, and more. Get on our wavelength every week to find out what's real with China-Africa Talk. Find us on your favorite podcast. We'll see you there.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host,
Shane Bigham with you on this Thursday. Still to come. In business, China continues to improve conditions for the country's small and medium enterprises. In sports, Champions League action between PSG and Liverpool. In culture and entertainment, an exhibition in Shanghai explores different styles of photography. To contact us, you can email radio@cgtn.com or follow our X account @CGTNradio. But now with the check of the day's headlines, here's Tanyu.
Thank you, Shane. The Israeli military says it killed a secretary to Hezbollah Secretary General Naim Qassem in Beirut during overnight strikes targeting the group's infrastructure. It came after Lebanon's Hezbollah group said it had fired rockets at northern Israel in response to what it calls Israel's ceasefire violations. Israel has carried out its heaviest strikes across Lebanon since the current round of conflict with Hezbollah broke out last month. Lebanon's civil defense authorities say the Israeli attacks left more than 250 people dead and over 1,100 others wounded on Wednesday. Israel's military said the attacks targeted Hezbollah command centers and military sites. It came hours after the announcement of a 2-week U.S.-Iran ceasefire. Israel and the U.S. have maintained that Lebanon is not included in the truce. U.S. President Donald Trump has met NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte about growing frictions over Iran. Trump has threatened U.S. withdrawal from NATO, accusing the alliance of not showing up when the U.S. needs help. The Wall Street Journal reports that the White House is considering punishing NATO allies that Trump called unhelpful. Countries including Spain, Italy, and France have stopped American planes headed to Iran from using their airspace and military bases. Rutte defended the alliance.
Let me be absolutely clear. He is clearly disappointed with many NATO allies, and I can see his point. But at the same time, I was also able to point to the fact that the large majority of European nations has been helpful with basing, with logistics, with overflights, with making sure that they lived up to the commitments. And there is also widespread support for the fact that degrading the nuclear and the ballistic missile capacity from Iran was really crucial. And that only the US was able at this point to do that.
Rutte described his discussions with Trump as very frank and very open. The World Health Organization is warning that health facilities in the Middle East are under severe strain. Regional Director for the Eastern Mediterranean, Dr. Hanan Balki, said emergency services are overwhelmed.
In Lebanon, a ceasefire is also urgently needed. Further violence and displacement will continue to devastate the Lebanese health system and disproportionately impact the most vulnerable, including people with chronic conditions, the elderly, and children.
In Lebanon, 1 in 5 people has been displaced, with nearly 5,000 injured and over 1,500 killed. Hospitals in Iran are also under pressure, with more than 33,000 injured and over 2,300 killed since the conflict began. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu supported the U.S. decision to suspend strikes on Iran, but clarified that it does not include the conflict with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has expressed honor in hosting the talks between U.S. and Iranian delegations. Sharif has thanked U.S. and Iranian leaders for supporting Pakistan's mediation efforts. He emphasized that the ceasefire is just the first step toward lasting regional peace and prosperity. The Vietnamese president will pay a state visit to China next week. The visit by To Lam, also General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam Central Committee, will run from April the 14th to 17th. And finally, Sri Lankan police have repatriated 125 individuals suspected of involvement in telecom fraud in China. The Chinese Ministry of Public Security said these suspects returned on March the 29th with the support of the Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka and Chinese police. It said the joint operation was a result of deepened international law enforcement cooperation between Chinese and Sri Lankan police to crack down on cross-border telecom fraud.
All right, thank you very much. That's Tianyu with headlines. And coming up in business, China continues to improve conditions for the country's small and medium enterprises.
The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
36 past the hour. Stock markets on the Chinese mainland closed lower on Thursday. The Shanghai Composite was down nearly 0.7%. The Shenzhen Component lost over 0.3%. Oil and gas exploitation and component shares were among the top gainers. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index declined more than 0.5%. Japan's Nikkei decreased over 0.7%. China's business environment for small and medium enterprises continues to improve, with disparities across regions narrowing. That's according to the 2025 Annual Assessment Report on the SME Development Environment by the Industry and Information Technology Ministry. The evaluation across 50 major cities shows growing resilience among SMEs, which account for more than 90% of China's private enterprises. Over 70% of specialized and sophisticated SMEs reported stable or rising revenue. More than 60% plan to increase R&D spending in the year ahead. Local governments have stepped up targeted support and improved public services for such companies. Overall satisfaction among SMEs has also risen, underscoring steady progress in stabilizing employment, business, and market confidence. The first batch of overseas exhibits for the 139th China Import and Export Fair has cleared customs at Nansha Port in Guangdong Province, marking the start of inbound preparations for the event. That event, also known as the Canton Fair, is China's longest-running, largest, and most widely attended international trade fair. The initial shipment, consisting of 137 items of household and kitchen products made in Turkey, weighs around 18,000 kilograms, setting a record for the heaviest single batch of inbound exhibits in the fair's history. To facilitate the process, ports have set up dedicated service counters for the fair, while leveraging digital customs solutions to ensure faster and more efficient clearance. Keng Le is an official with Nansha Customs.
We have set up special customs clearance windows for Canton Fair exhibits. We have also coordinated in advance with ports to ensure smooth berthing and handling of exhibits. Priority is given to customs clearance procedures, such as declaration, inspection, sampling, and testing for exhibition goods, so that goods can be inspected and released immediately upon arrival.
More exhibits from countries including Egypt, South Korea, and India are expected in the coming days. The 139th edition of the fair will run in 3 phases from April 15th to May 5th in Guangzhou. The event features over 75,000 booths and expects to draw more than 30,000 participating companies. Geopolitical turmoil in the Middle East is driving investors to seek safer choices. Hong Kong's emerging as a key beneficiary, well positioned to attract those capital flows. Laura Westbrook reports.
Hong Kong's chief executive John Lee has said that the conflict in the Middle East could fuel capital flows to the city.
Under one country, two systems, Hong Kong will be very safe. which will be a big contrast to the situation now in Middle East. So investors and businesses looking for diversification, at the same time looking for security of their investment, will definitely look to Hong Kong.
Experts say that Hong Kong could benefit as investors look for alternatives to Dubai and Abu Dhabi amid the conflict in the Middle East.
Of course, in the midst of what's happening, Hong Kong looks very stable. Frankly speaking, probably more stable than Singapore, and the reason is that the mainland it appears as very resilient versus this shock because of the strategic reserves, because the access to other sources of energy. So Hong Kong should benefit from that.
In recent years, there has been increased links between Hong Kong and the Gulf region, signing pacts with major financial hubs such as Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Saudi Arabia and Hong Kong agreed to establish a joint $1 billion investment fund to help companies from Hong Kong and the Chinese mainland's Greater Bay Area to expand into the Saudi market. Hong Kong's stock market has also attracted interest from Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds. But economists say direct flows will be affected because of the Iran war.
A lot of the money that the Gulf has invested overseas, let alone the money that has not yet arrived, meaning the most kind of recent projects will probably not see the end of the light at the end of the tunnel, because those funds will need to remain in the Gulf to reconstruct what has been damaged, energy, infrastructure, you name it, and maybe even to cover losses.
Officials have sought to emphasize Hong Kong's safe haven appeal, aiming to attract capital flows amid the ongoing conflict. But analysts warned that if global commodity prices continue to rise, Hong Kong will be impacted, and that will potentially hurt demand from businesses and consumers.
That was Laura Westbrook reporting. China's research icebreaker Shuilong, or Snow Dragon, has returned to Shanghai, completing its 160-day voyage on its 42nd expedition to the Antarctic. The 28-member team completed China's first successful hot water drilling into the ice. The mission drilled over 3,400 meters into the Chilean subglacial lake, far exceeding the current record of 2,540 meters. The achievement allows it to drill across more than 90% of the Antarctic ice sheet and the entire Arctic ice sheet. China's launched another group of low-orbit internet satellites. The 21st group blasted off from the Taiwan Satellite Launch Center on Thursday. Officials say the satellites have entered their preset orbits. These satellites will provide high-speed, low-latency broadband. They're designed to support internet access, Internet of Things communications, and emergency services in remote areas. The launch is part of a broader push to build a Chinese-owned mega-constellation. Just 2 days earlier, 18 satellites for the Thousand Sails constellation launched from Hainan, bringing that network to 126 satellites. The U.S. tariff uncertainty is triggering wild swings in cargo volumes and restructuring trans-Pacific trade. One of the United States' major shipping ports at Long Beach is now feeling the slowdown after a tariff-driven surge in imports. Edith Tianchen has more from Los Angeles.
It's been more than a year since U.S. President Donald Trump imposed levies on a long list of trading partners, forcing many retailers to import their goods ahead of tariffs taking effect.
Because if you can bring a lot of stuff in before the tariff comes into effect, you're able to absorb that in some other way. You also saw companies that did really great job of maybe buying up other people's inventory because they abandoned it overseas.
That wave of what's called front loading helped push the Port of Long Beach to record-breaking container volumes last year. But the momentum is shifting. In the first 2 months of 2026, the port handled about 1.6 million containers, down 6% from the same period a year ago. And that sharp swing is putting pressure on the logistics sector.
For a standard operator, they're wondering, are their customers going to flood them with freight that then they won't be able to handle? And then will they basically dry up all of that volume and later on in the year not have any business?
Just a few years ago, nearly 70% of cargo moving through the port came from China. By 2025, that share had dropped to around 35% as companies diversified their supply chains and looked for alternative manufacturing hubs. But China is adapting, expanding into new markets and maintaining strong export momentum.
In February 2026, CCPIT issued a total of 744,500 certificates, including certificates of origin, ATA carnets, and other commercial documents, marking a year-on-year increase of 72.38%. This strong growth indicates a robust start for China's foreign trade this year. The sharp rise in certification data reflects not only the continued impact of pro-trade policies, but also the effectiveness of market diversification.
So far, tariffs have not delivered the return of U.S. manufacturing jobs many policymakers had hoped for. Instead, federal data shows the sector has shed roughly 90,000 jobs since spring of last year. Port officials and industry leaders say the on-again, off-again nature of tariff policy continues to cloud forecasts, raising questions about costs, margins, and the potential for higher prices for consumers.
That was Edith Tian-Shen reporting. A growing group of U.S. Federal Reserve policymakers say interest rate increases might be needed to counter inflation. They've warned that the Middle East conflict could cause inflation to rise further and hurt the job market. But the Fed's March meeting minutes still show a majority of officials favoring rate cuts. Participants also discuss the impacts of rising energy prices. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in sports, Champions League action between PSG and Liverpool.
Sideline Story brings you all things sports related. The hottest topics, latest events, juiciest stories, all with a very personal take. Subscribe to Sideline Story Podcast for heated sports discussions covering events that are happening in China and around the world.
47 past now and turning to sports. Here's Yang Guang.
Thank you, Shane. We start with football. Defending champion Paris Saint-Germain has taken a 2-0 advantage over Liverpool after the first leg of their Champions League quarter-final. Goals from Desiki Doué and Kvichak Kvaratskhelia on either side of half-time sealed home win in Paris, although PSG missed several chances to widen the margin. Liverpool struggled to contain them after setting up cautiously, with Mohamed Salah starting on the bench. Despite the setback, Liverpool head coach Arne Slot remains confident ahead of the return leg at Anfield.
And don't forget that Anfield can do a lot, because I was sitting after the away game at Galatasaray in front of most of the same journalists who were also not very positive about our game. And 1 week later at Anfield, we played probably the best game of the season. So our fans do make a big difference for us. But that's also needed, because I think it was completely clear today that we need our fans more than ever if we face this Paris Saint-Germain team.
The second leg will be played on Wednesday. In other action, Atletico Madrid has taken control of their Champions League quarter-final after a 2-0 first leg win over 10-man Barcelona. Barca controlled much of the game early on, but the turning point came in the 42nd minute when Pau Kubasi was sent off for bringing down Giuliano Simeone as the last defender. Julian Alvarez called the resulting free kick into the top corner in stoppage time before Alexander Solat added a second in the 70th minute to hand Atletico a decisive advantage. Despite the setback, Barca coach Hansi Flick says his side remains confident ahead of the return leg.
No, I haven't spoke with the referee. I think it was better also today not to speak with him. We have to accept it, and how I say, we have to focus on the match on the next Tuesday in Atletico. We have the quality, we have the players who can decide, who can make the changes, and of course we have to fight.
The second leg will be played next Wednesday in Madrid. Chinese teenager Bu Shuaihan has won gold in the men's 10-meter air pistol and rifle and pistol World Cup in Grenada, claiming his first senior World Cup title. Bu set the pace early and held his nerve through the elimination rounds despite strong pressure from Russia's Anton Aristakov. After the win, Bu spoke about what the result means for him.
I feel extremely excited about winning a gold medal this time. My training at home has really laid a solid foundation, and this result represents a new breakthrough for me. Overall, I'm very satisfied with my performance.
He edged Aristakov on the final shot, giving China its second gold of the World Cup stop. In badminton, China's Shi Yuqi has advanced to the men's last 16 at the Badminton Asia Championships with a straight game win over Chinese Taipei's Li Chihao, taking control early and staying composed under pressure. Meanwhile, Li Shifeng suffered an upset by India's Ayush Shetty, who played with power and precision to claim a surprise victory. On the women's side, Wang Zhiyi won convincingly over Chinese Taipei's Chou Ping-chen and will meet India's PV Sindhu in the last 16. In tennis, third seed Alexander Zverev survived a tough second-round test against the qualifier Christian Garin at ATP Monte Carlo Masters, winning in 3 sets after nearly 3 hours on courts. Garin took the first set, but Zverev fought back to a leveled match, then claimed 5 straight games in the deciding set to secure a 7-5 victory. The German, chasing his 8th Masters title and 4th on clay, showed resilience to overturn a late deficit and break at crucial moments, including a decisive backhand volley. Zverev will next face Zizou Bergs in the 3rd round. In the NBA, the Oklahoma City Thunder has secured the league's best record with a 128-110 win over the Los Angeles Clippers in Inglewood. Chet Holmgren led the way with 30 points and 14 rebounds, while Shai Gilgeous-Alexander added 20 points and 11 assists. Bench standout Isaiah Joe scored 21 and Jalen Williams added 18, helping the Thunder clinch the Western Conference top seed for the 3rd straight year. For the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard had 20 points and Kobe Sanders 17 off the bench. Elsewhere, the Phoenix Suns edged the Dallas Mavericks 112-107 to secure a 7th seed, while the San Antonio Spurs topped the Portland Trail Blazers 112-101. And finally, NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal is launching a new professional league to find the world's best dunker. O'Neal, who dunked roughly 4,000 times during his NBA career, announced that he is the founder and inaugural commissioner of Dunkman, following a successful 6-episode TV series last year. In partnership with TNT Sports, the league will feature 5 live events with 24 dunkers from around the world competing for the title of world champion and a $500,000 prize. Events will be broadcast on platforms including TNT, TBS, and HBO Max, with an Olympic-level scoring system judged by experts.
All right, thank you very much. That's Yang Guang with sports. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. In culture and entertainment, an exhibition in Shanghai explores different styles of photography.
From north to south, east to west, people in China are chasing their dreams and leaving their mark. Want to know how they beat the odds and made a difference? Footprints brings you the true life stories of their journeys.
53 past the hour. In culture and entertainment, at Fotografiska Shanghai, 3 exhibitions explore photography from strikingly different angles, from hidden street photography archives to digitally constructed images and deeply personal visual diaries. Under one roof, the works of Vivian Maier, Huang Peishan, and Lin Zhiping offer audiences 3 distinct ways of seeing the world. Zhang Yue has more.
She was a nanny, but behind the camera, she was something else entirely. In her spare time caring for children in the United States, she quietly photographed the world around her, eventually leaving behind more than 150,000 images. Most of them she never showed to anyone. In 2007, a vast archive of her undeveloped photographs was discovered when a Chicago collector purchased some of her negatives at a local auction. That unexpected discovery brought the remarkable work of Vivian Maier to light.
Vivian Maier really built her own photographic language for herself, probably to be free, probably to be someone, to build her own identity.
Marking the centenary of her birth, the major exhibition Unseen Work by Vivian Maier is now on view at Fotografiska Shanghai, presenting more than 200 photos, including some from her travels in Asia that had never been exhibited before. Her black and white street photographs capture fleeting moments of urban life in America from the 1950s to the 1970s. Workers, children, passers-by, and strangers caught in the rhythm of the city. In the late 1990s, her experiments with color photography began to reveal a new exploration of abstract forms and textures.
And I'm very proud to give not only voice to Vivian Maier, but also probably voice to many others, women photographers, who had no possibility to be heard, to be seen, or to show her work.
If Vivian Maier captured reality in a split second, another artist here is doing almost the opposite, reshaping reality through digital manipulation. The space for crack in the curtain becomes part of the exhibition itself. Everyday elements are extracted and rearranged, blurring the boundary between private and public space. Questions about public and private space also appear in another exhibition. Photographer Lin Zhipeng uses an intimate visual language to capture the subtle dialogue between bodies, nature, and everyday objects. His images drift between city corners, fragments of nature, and intimate moments, capturing a quiet tension between social expectations and personal freedom.
That was Zhang Yue reporting from Shanghai. The China-Brazil Cultural Year concert is opened in Brasilia, bringing together the musical traditions of both countries. Jointly presented by the China National Symphony Orchestra and Brazil's Claudio Santoro National Theatre Symphony Orchestra, the event drew an audience of around 600. Chinese conductor Jing Huan says the opening piece, a well-known Brazilian dance work, was chosen as a musical greeting from the Chinese side. Brazilian conductor Claudio Cohen says the concerts brought the two cultures closer through music. Chinese ambassador Zhu Qingqiao says bilateral ties are at their strongest, with cultural exchanges helping deepen friendships between the two peoples. The 6th China Fashion Week of the Hainan Free Trade Port is officially opened in Sanya. The event in southern China is bringing together global fashion resources and local intangible cultural heritage, using style as a bridge to create new cultural and tourism scenarios with distinct features. This year's Fashion Week includes international runway shows and an exhibition combining intangible heritage and fashion, a global designers forum, an industry matchmaking event, and an international cultural exchange concert. Designs on display feature elements such as Li brocade, Miao embroidery, and traditional Hainan textile and dyeing techniques. Now, fashion designer Ling Shuning says the event offers a valuable platform for exchanges. Russian designer Ferdi says he sees strong potential in the Chinese market. The event is also linked with major cultural and tourism venues across Sanya. We're at 57 past the hour. Checking the forecast before we go, and Beijing will get a light rainfall. This evening it's down to 8 degrees, sunny and 25 for Friday. Shanghai will see moderate rain in 18 overnight, then overcast conditions in 26. Chongqing's down to 19, then moderate rainfall in 28. Nanchang will see thunder showers, a low of 21. Moderate rainfall tomorrow and 27 degrees. And that's it for this edition of the Beijing Hour. Making news today, Iran's accused the U.S. of violating 3 conditions of the 10-point ceasefire agreement. And Iranian media say the Strait of Hormuz is closed, once again forcing oil tankers to turn back. On behalf of the staff, this is Shane Bigham in the Chinese capital, hoping you'll join us for the next edition of the Beijing Hour and open a window to the world together.
Find the Beijing Hour at precisely 6 p.m. Beijing time. We meet you on podcast and on air every weekday. The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
He can't live without the Yellow River in his eyes.
The Yellow River is so noble and elegant.
Both my grandpa and dad made a living from the river.
Would you like to move away from the Yellow River?
I don't think I will. I love it so much.
The Yellow River, the second longest river in China, is regarded as a shaping force in the history, economy, and culture of northern China. Today, about 100 million people live within its water basin, making up nearly 9% of the country's population. How is climate change felt at its headwaters, and what are the locals doing to cope with it? What are the descendants of the boatmen doing? What has kept some people from leaving their home village by the river, and what has drawn others back? Could the fading fishing community revive in a time of digital transformation? From 2021 to 2024, our reporters visited the upper, middle and lower reaches of the Yellow River, talked to the herders, farmers, boatmen, fishermen and eco-activists who share a close bond with the river, and present their stories in pictures, podcasts and videos, all in our 12-part series, The Yellow River Mosaic, available only on CGTN Radio